Hey guys, what is going on? Shah here, and today, really quickly, I want to break down how tanking is shifting from BFA to Shadowlands and what you can kind of prepare yourself for, how you should be preparing yourself, more mentally than anything, but possibly on what class you might want to play. So after playing a fair bit on the beta, after breaking down all these covenants so far, playing through several of the dungeons multiple times through different covenants with different legendaries, I started to notice that tanking just doesn't feel as good as it does currently on beta, at least as a Guardian Druid. And I was starting to wonder why. And at first I was just like, the stats have shifted. We're on template characters compared to a fully geared, maximized character at best item level with best in slot Azerite and trinkets and all that fun stuff. And then I had to dismiss that just because that shouldn't really be it. And then I started to notice my healing throughput dip dramatically. So typically on live currently, I am out healing the healer by typically a fair bit, whether it's a Holy Paladin, Resto Druid, whatever it may be. Normally by the end of the key, I have out healed them either by a couple percent or multiple thousand. So on beta currently, I'm healing about 1/3 of what actual other healers are being able to throughput. And I was starting to wonder why that might be and what might be causing that. And obviously you can take into account the fact that we lost a lot of external applications, things like Leech, things like N'Zoth Trinket, for example, things like Resounding Protection, Impassive Visage, things like that, which contributed to a fair bit of our healing, to be completely fair. And I started to take a look at logs. So I started combat logging my keys and uploading them to Warcraft logs, and then I wanted to compare them for you today. So that's why I have this freehold pulled up. This is from about a month ago. This is a freehold 23, pretty easy dungeon. And I want to take a look at the damage taken. So if we click here, you're going to see all of this yellow is melee. So taking a little bit of a closer look, about 80% of the damage that I took throughout the course of this key was melee. Physical damage, melee auto attacks from these mobs, which is a pretty significant amount. So that's why things like shield block were so strong. That's why warriors were so meta. Well, there's other reasons, of course, but being able to literally just mitigate flat out 80% of the damage in over the course of a key was insanely strong. Other applications more focused on Guardian Druid, for example, Earth Warden being a very, very significant heal for us and a very significant damage absorb that scaled almost infinitely because it was a 30% damage reduction of the auto attacks. Second up to 3 times, obviously some auto attacks snuck in here and there, but during incarnation windows and during windows of Vision of Perfection, we typically add pretty good uptime on our Earth Warden stacks. So there's going to be a pretty large shift. Okay, so maybe Freehold isn't the best example because it's obviously totally weighted towards auto attacks. So let's take a look at Waycrest Manor. Waycrest Manor being obviously a dungeon that you can probably categorize as a lot of shadow damage or a lot of magical damage, and you are correct in that statement. Melees are about 60%, so obviously a little bit less. With obviously you'll see a lot of shadow damage along with other physical damage, but that aren't melee attacks. And that's important for things like Earth Warden, at least for us, and other things like Warrior. Warriors can block attacks, or at least portion of attacks, but anything that's not coded as melee, some damage might leak through it in some way, shape, or form. So melee attacks are really what we're going to be focusing on here. And I guess I do have Shrine of the Storm pulled up as well. This is about 65%. And this is obviously a dungeon where we might have missed a couple kicks. Some people stood in I maybe stood in some things like Eye of Corruption, and some other effects like Defiled Ground and Sanguine and things like that. So for the most part, most of the damage that we've been taking in BFA has been physical attacks. So people who can mitigate physical attacks, Guardian Druids, Warriors, and Monks with Stagger have been extremely efficient tanks, and any tank who really has any way to block physical or melee attacks consistently were pretty strong. So we're going to take a jump over to what some of the logs might look like on beta currently. So Sanguine Depths. We're going to go over to damage taken, click on myself, and we're going to see that only 55%. So this is a lot lower than comparatively our Waycrest was, or even, obviously Freehold. 5% lower doesn't seem too crazy, except you have to take into account that this is actually one of the dungeons that has the most amount of melee attacks in it, and some of the least amount of casters, a lot of just mobs that are going to just kind of hit your tank in the dick, with a lack of better terms. So then looking over at Hall's Atonement, it's actually even lower than that. We're going to be looking at a melee attack rate of only about 50%, 51%, which means Earth Warden is going to have a lot less value than it would compared to obviously Freehold, where we're going to be reducing a lot more of this damage. So looking at this, there's a couple things that this tells me. there's a lot less reliance on people's ability to keep up mitigation. So things like a Demon Hunter, this might help them out because Demon Spikes or even Shield of the Righteous for Paladins was not an ability you were able to keep up 100% of the time. Shield Block, Earth Warden, obviously Stagger, all have high effective uptimes, which means that there's going to be less of an emphasis on these kind of ways to passively mitigate damage. There's going to be more of an emphasis going into future keys relying on your cooldowns and your damage reduction and possibly even like things like kiting. So going into Shadowlands, coming out of BFA, there's going to be a couple things you're going to want to look for if you're looking to tank or looking to main a tank or looking to class swap or figuring out you're weighing between monk and druid or paladin and warrior. There's a few things to keep in mind. And I think the biggest thing is going to be how many cooldowns does your class have that can consistently use throughout the key to reduce damage, like significant portions of damage. You can look at damage taken, you can look at me, and you can tell that during this portion of the dungeon with Jagged Swipe, this is a portion where I'm going to want to commit a larger cooldown because I'm taking a very, very large amount of damage over the course of this portion of the dungeon. And this is the case for Mythic dungeons in general. You want to use your cooldowns at the right time. Along with this, you want to pick a tank that's going to be able to have a sustained throughput that doesn't rely too much on the healer, because healers are also limited by the amount of throughput they can put out. And there's a lot of things you have to take into account: conduits, legendaries, soulbinds, and just talents in general, and what you have in your toolkit. So the shift in the meta is probably going to go on to tanks that are able to mitigate a lot of damage through multiple cooldown uses and chaining cooldowns together along with healers' damage reductions. And their ability to heal themselves quite frequently. Now, tanks like Blood Death Knight, Prot Paladin, Guardian Druid are all tanks that have been known for being able to have a high amount of throughput. I'm going to talk more about Guardian's throughput probably in a future video because I don't want to make this video too long. But then there's classes like Monk, Warrior, and arguably Demon Hunter that have a little bit lower HPS throughput and rely a little bit more on their healers to keep themselves alive. So that right there already tells you, okay, so some tanks might be stronger when it comes to healing and some tanks might not. And then you also have to take into account different cooldowns. What class has short cooldowns? What class has longer cooldowns? How significant are these cooldowns with damage reduction? And how many times in the key am I going to need to be able to use these abilities? Based on obviously how you're pulling your route, of course. But these are two things that are going to matter a little bit more than they have in the past. In the past, passive damage reductions or just general mitigation, like I mentioned, Shield Block and Earth Warden, have been abilities that we're just able to passively use or just kind of have a base rotation for, and we're able to mitigate a lot of the damage, and that's not going to be the case going forward. And it's noticeable. So at the start of this expansion, if you're looking to pick a tank, I would recommend picking a tank that, one, feels good. I think you just play a tank that you want to play, what class you like. I often hear that Guardian Druid is very boring. If you think that, don't play Guardian Druid. If you think Blood Decay is boring or you don't like the playstyle of it, like myself, then don't play Blood Decay. But if you're looking to be meta, and if you're looking to have successful key runs and pushing high-level content, you might want to try to pick a tank that, obviously, you're going to need to do research. I don't want to lay it all out again. I don't want this video to be too long of a rant. Find a tank that has good healing throughput, can self-sustain and at points where there's going to be a high amount of damage, and also has a good amount of damage reduction cooldowns that they can use and rotate through and cycle through, as well as obviously you need to pick DPS to run with that bring utility, and same with their healers. You obviously want healers who are going to be able to have high throughput as well as offer damage and damage reduction. So keeping all of this in mind, if you're looking to play a tank, that's what I recommend looking out for. I'm going to have future videos, hopefully before Shadowlands comes out, and Discharge Shadowlands to kind of go through exactly what might be looking like their meta. As of right now, I don't have an answer. I can speculate on what might be good, but I don't want to make any false, I guess, predictions, because I hate being wrong, though I am wrong quite often. So I hope this helps. I hope you guys enjoyed this kind of content. This is just, I was looking at logs earlier today while going through my Venthyr video and analyzing some things, and this is something that I noticed, and I wanted to bring it to your guys' attention if you didn't already know the damage profiles of a lot of these newer dungeons. So again, I hope it helps. Look out for that Venthyr video. That will be coming out tomorrow for sure. And then I'm going to be exploring Necrolords later this week and or this weekend. So keep an eye out for that. And until next time, take care.